wanted to use imagery that people would be acquainted with, but also I wanted to provide certain aspects of double and plural meaning associations into the work as well. I find just working with, or paying more attention, maybe as one gets older, to the basic elements, earth, air, fire, water. Sometimes you just need to do very little, and you can allow the elements to manifest themselves, you know. Like, for instance, holding up semi-transparent sheet. If there's a bit of wind, if there's a, it can actually convey something, and but in the context, people might wonder, they might make mental associations between this thing flapping over certain elements on the ground and think there's a certain significance to that, So I'm trying to facilitate possible mental synchronicities for people, for viewers, as they're watching the work, so they can make their own connections, So it's not like, the potatoes just mean such and such, the line of cut drawings means just such and such, whatever. They do mean, they have these associations, but there's also, I want ambiguities and pluralities of possibility so that the viewer can trust his or her creativity and judgment. I want to be, I think it's not healthy if, a sensitive, intelligent viewer who is open-minded gets certain impressions for him or herself from looking at work. But then if the artist says, no, this meant that, then it somehow disempowers the viewer. I want to empower the viewer to trust his or her judgment. So that's why I'm trying to give both and possibilities of meaning associations to the elements I'm using.
Kind of a slow, meditative uncovering of things and revealing things, maybe even, and then hiding them again, maybe, like time does with history. Particularly, I thought about the gravel as a zone of covering over. I think it was a Donovan Rossa. I think it's in the museum. Kind of became the linchpin for me as a kind of way of thinking about what I would do, and it was that idea of being held captive in his body, in a sense that his physicality was there, but he kept his mind free and was unfettered. And I think that underpinned for me how I wanted to approach it, that we are inside these walls and we are contained, and it's like our own history to a certain extent, like the systems that we are part of. We are free within them, but you're still held by them, So I'd actually put in some images in, at the start of the day, or asked other people to put them in for me. The images that I uncovered were Dublin City after 1916 and asteroids. I had placed a series of asteroids in among the gravel as well, as a complete other take on time.
The piece I'm doing here today is called Retyping the Typecast. It refers to Padraig Pearse, and that his so typecast as a blood sacrifice. Very few people recognise him as an educationalist.
Reinforced by political economy. I feel sure that political economy was invented not by Adam Smith, but by the devil. Perhaps Adam Smith was the human instrument.
Though we're apart, we'll always be together. What do you say when words are not enough?
It was very much about exploring the jail as a site of trauma. I was struck really by the responsibility to represent a narrative of nationhood, and I started to explore this idea of martyrdom and this idea of the embodiment of Ireland as a woman, and yet at the same time the condition of women today in Ireland.
I'm doing breath work every morning to develop the voice in order to deliver this text. The text is comprised of excerpts from various sources on Francis Sheehy Skeffington, Thomas Dixon and Patrick McIntyre, the three who were shot at Portobello Barracks. When it came to Skeffington's turn to undergo the various ceremonials, he somewhat nonplussed the officials in charge. He simply took up a passionate attitude, buttoned up his coat and said, "I will facilitate you in no way. I'll obey no prison regulations, and I'll take no food until I am released." He was wearing a Votes for Women badge. McCann would talk freely on feminism and on rational life. He believed that the sexes should be educated together in order that they become accustomed early on to each other's influence. And he believed that women should be afforded the same opportunities as were afforded to the so-called superior sex. He was shot the next morning. Mrs. Julia Hughes, Monaghan, 1953, Bureau of Military History, witness statement.
The performance involves a contemporary reimagining of the political activism of women involved in the 1916 Rising, who were imprisoned in Kilmainham, in relation to the continuing battles for bodily autonomy fought currently by women in Ireland, and in particular the campaign to repeal the Eighth Amendment. Many of these women were committed socialists and feminists who championed gender equality, and they really transgressed the gender norms of their time.
Women who were held in Kilmainham during the Civil War were formally in charge of the commemoration of the Easter Rising for the Republican anti-treaty side. They really didn't connect to their own roles and what they had done during that period. We wanted to focus on the only parts of that day that actually commemorated women. And so what we did was focus on the Hail Mary. The Hail Mary was the only aspect of the day that was actually about women.
Shade of our atá an de grasta tá tíirna le is banní huidir maná agus banní tar de brena isa.
An níomh huáthar dé gurí na pancéis agus suir ar máis men.
Shade of our atá an de grasta tá tíirna le is banniú idir maná agus banní tura de brunne isa.
An níomhhara ó bháthairé gurí na pacéis agus soror an las amén.
Sé de bhathhuire atá an de grásta tá na tíirna le. Is banniú idir maná agus banní tura de brunne isa.
He had violated her in the sanctity of sleep and rest. It took her so long to use the word rape, and certainly it was that she didn't want to believe that that's what had happened.
Margaret Skinner also noted that because of the way that the Constitution of the new Irish Republic was written, that equality between the men and women meant that they were both equal in taking the risks. She noted when one of the men said to her that she shouldn't go out and take part in a sniper action around the Shelburne Hotel. And she said, "We had the same right to risk our lives as the men, because equality was enshrined within the proclamation." She managed to win that argument, and she was one of the people that went out and tried to bomb the Shelburne. She was shot 3 times, but she survived.
We chose the governor's chambers, and you could say that that governor's room is very powerful in that idea of this room locates a lot of power just through where it sits in the building.
In a sense, the performance is also a way for us to become unstuck. It's not just about deciding something you want to say and presenting it. It's about presenting the means of finding out what it is you think.
The duration of the performance was very important in that respect as well, that to do 10.5, 11 hours of improvisation in that manner is very exhausting, but it's also a thrill in that you can't predict how you will feel, and you have to work through periods of loss and letting go of what something is to you or what it can mean, and coming back and reconnecting. But also within that, it's not just the objects. I mean, there's also this very, very important factor that there's 2 of us in the room, and that we're working simultaneously with a lot of proximity and occasionally with contact. And the mood and the changes between the 2 of us and the negative space between us is very important.